Oh yeah, you totally couldn't.
You can't tell.
You would have thought this was like
the first time
regular
I had the quinoa pasta, I almost like messaged the customer service line to be like, I think there's a mistake. Like, there's no way.
Yeah, so I'm a registered dietitian. I'm the founder of a virtual care platform called July Health, exclusively for PCOS in Canada. But how I got started was actually 5 years ago. I was a burnt out healthcare worker in the front lines and raging PCOS symptoms myself. My skin was breaking out. I was losing my hair. My cycles were ghosting me. And I did not receive the care that I was hoping I would. I was basically just told, here's birth control or come back when you're trying to get pregnant. I realized I need to do something about it. So I ended up quitting my job, starting July Health, and now I'm trying to make PCOS care a little bit more accessible in Canada.
For somebody that doesn't know, what is PCOS?
Yeah, so PCOS stands for polycystic ovary syndrome. 1 in 10 women in the world have this condition, so it's very common, but actually up to 70% of cases end up going undiagnosed, and usually that's because of a lack of care, lack of research. People don't realize that this is actually a condition they have.
What does being a dietitian have to do with PCOS?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't realize actually, although there are a few medications that could help with PCOS symptoms, the primary intervention is nutrition. So ultimately, dietitians are kind of the leader in helping you actually manage your PCOS symptoms. And the other thing that's really important, and I think it's not talked about enough, but a lot of people with PCOS also have ADHD. I think we're hearing that adult women are starting to get late-stage diagnoses, and ultimately, it's a perfect storm because now you have a chronic condition that you have to stay consistent with and manage long-term with nutrition, but it's really hard to stick with it if you also have ADHD and have trouble planning or you have that executive dysfunctioning. So ultimately, that actually is what makes July Health different. We use an approach that is more neuro-friendly and helps people with ADHD actually stay consistent with their nutrition plan long-term.
That's super cool. Can you tell me more about this neuro-friendly approach?
Yeah, so it's actually a term that we kind of invented, but ultimately the conventional advice if you go to see a nutritionist or a dietitian is, this is your goal, here's your meal plan, here's the list of things that you should be doing. Why? For someone with ADHD, that's really hard because there's some days where maybe our planning brain is a little bit better than other days when maybe we're just really tired, our hormones or PCOS is keeping us down, maybe we have PMS, PMD, and it's really hard to stick with the plan. And so a neuro-friendly approach is advice that helps people actually account for day-to-day variances. So I like to teach people this one tool that I call having a high and a low energy plan. A high energy plan for your health is an ideal day, a day where you have a lot of energy, you can cook all of your meals at home, stick to your plan, maybe go work out, but we're gonna have low energy days, and usually the low energy days are when people fall off of that diet because people don't account for how our brain is doing day to day. So a low energy plan looks like, okay, how do we practice that gray area? How do we maybe make sure that our nutrition is somewhat balanced, even if it's not perfect? Maybe we don't completely make it from scratch. Maybe we go get a meal delivery, maybe we do some frozen meals, or maybe we do a salad kit. And that's what a low energy plan could look like so that you're actually staying consistent long term. That would be an example of what neuro-friendly advice actually looks like. And it's not just like, plan a day to do a massive batch meal prep, because that doesn't always work for people with ADHD.
I love that. Okay, speaking of food, why don't we take a quick little lunch break and we're gonna get you to taste test. I know a lot of your clients already use Power Kitchen, but we're gonna get you to taste test some of the meals on our new menu that just came out.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Awesome. Okay, we've got a taste test here of 4 different meals from the new menu, and you can see on the stickers on them, they actually have the macro breakdown, so you can see exactly what's going on. So I'd love to know your thoughts for someone with PCOS or just generally busy lifestyle. How do these meals stack up, both from a taste perspective and from a nutrition perspective? So I'll let you pick first. We've got a beef ragu, a souvlaki chicken, we've got an al pastor chicken, and a teriyaki beef.
Ooh, I get to choose.
You gotta pick your first one.
Okay, let's do this one. I see white rice. I eat white rice. A lot of misconception on the fact that maybe you shouldn't be doing white rice for PCOS. Totally a myth. Whoa, very Asian flavors. Wasn't expecting that.
So it's 343 calories, 41 grams of protein, 37 grams of carbs, and 7 grams of fat.
I love it. So for someone with PCOS, because often there's an element of insulin resistance, I think there's a misconception that you need to be totally cutting out your carbs to improve your insulin resistance. But actually, women definitely need carbs. They also need some fats because fats are involved in hormone production. So if you go super low fat, you also may be losing your period, which is really really important for PCOS. And so I'm seeing 41 grams of protein here, amazing. I usually try to aim for at least 30 grams of protein per meal. That's kind of the amount that our muscles need to actually be building. So 41 grams of protein is amazing. That means you're going to be very satiated. You're probably not going to be going to snack later because you're actually getting the nutrition you need. And then I see 37 grams of carbs. I think that's a good amount. That amount I would call a moderate carb, so not too high, not too low. Obviously, it depends on your weight, if you're a male or a female, but 37 for female PCOS, I think that's appropriate because we do need some carbs still. 7 grams of fat, so that's on the lower side, but that's okay because I think throughout the day, your overall fat intake will probably be where you want it to be, which is kind of that like moderate, not too high, not too low either. So very lean meal. I think this would be good for a dinner, especially if you're not going to be too active later on. Good amount. If you're going to be active, you might need a little bit more carb or calories. Taste, 10 out of 10.
So this is al pastor chicken with a Mexican brown rice and a lemon parsley vinaigrette cauliflower. And the macros on it, we've got 340 calories, 37 grams of protein, 16 grams of carbs, and 14 grams of fat. So let's dig in. Wait, so I'll give you a sec.
So I like that there's cauliflower. Cauliflower is one of the higher fiber vegetables. Only recently are people starting to talk about just how little fiber we get in North America. The average North American is only getting about 50% of their fiber needs. This is bad because I don't know if you saw the news, more young people are getting colon cancer, which shouldn't be happening. And obviously there's so many factors to cancer, but ultimately our more processed food environment, having less fiber, it's not going to help. So we like cauliflower. And then let's try the chicken.
This was definitely marinated for like 18 hours, so I think you're going to like it.
Yeah, definitely. It does not taste plain. No Jim Bro plain chicken breasts over here.
This is a new recipe?
This is like an elevated, you know, the classic Jim Bro, like unseasoned chicken breast, white rice and broccoli. This is the elevated Jim Bro. It's like seasoned rice with chicken that actually has spices and some cauliflower.
If you're trying to eat things that are so bland, so plain, like plain chicken and plain rice and steamed broccoli, like how long can you realistically stick with that?
Yeah, healthy eating doesn't mean that you have to suffer either, or else you're not going to stick with your plan. I think it just depends on how you balance the rest of the day. So this is like an amazing low carb meal. 14 grams of fat, that's also a good amount. That's like not too high, not too low.
Those are some meals from one of our just kind of like basic everyday meal plans, but there's actually 7 different types of meal plans that Power Kitchen has. So there's one that's like lean muscle building, there's one for bulking, there's one for athletes, there's a plan for GLP. So depending on what your nutritional needs are, you can actually specify in your meals that you're ordering every week. And then we have even some customers who will customize meals, like specific macros on their meals. So perfect. I love it. So, okay, let's do another one. Yeah. This one here, we've got souvlaki chicken with Greek-style roasted potatoes, roasted broccoli, onions, and mushrooms. And the macros on it, we got 524 calories, 48 grams of protein, 36 grams of carbs, and 23 grams of fat. So this is definitely a heartier meal.
Let's try it. All right, let's do the protein. It's so smoky. It feels like it's barbecued. I love it.
It probably was. I'm a little spoiled now that I've been eating Power Kitchen. Like, I try to cook and I feel like I'm in university all over again. Like, my food just doesn't compare. But realistically, like, this is marinated for 18 hours. I'm not marinating my chicken for 18 hours.
This is, I think, an overall quite balanced one.
Last one here. We'll do beef ragu. This is a pomodoro quinoa pasta and roasted butternut squash. Macros are 518 calories, 39 grams of protein, 60 grams of carbs, and 14 grams of fat.
I'm excited. I love pasta alternatives. Oh yeah, you totally couldn't.
You can't tell.
You would have
if I had the quinoa pasta, I almost like messaged the customer service line to be like, I think there's a mistake. Like, there's no way.
So quinoa is gluten-free. We like that. So I think there's a misconception too that you need to be cutting out pasta if you want to lose weight or if you have PCOS. But actually, as long as you're getting a pasta that has a little bit more nutrition in it, which quinoa definitely does. Quinoa has great protein. It also has a little bit more fiber than a wheat white pasta would have. And the fact that it's gluten-free, this would be friendly for people with thyroid disorders who maybe have to do a gluten-free diet, people who have celiac who also need to be gluten-free. I love it. So let's try the meat sauce.
This was braised for 18 hours, by the way.
Wow. That also tastes really good. I love it. So I think it's very balanced. The fact that there's higher protein. The more protein there is in a meal, it'll offset any blood sugar spikes from carbs in a meal. You know, carbohydrate pairing, that's a thing. And the fats, I think, are quite balanced. 14 grams of fat, totally fine. 518 calories. I think that's an appropriate amount of calories in a meal for the general public. So I also think it's balanced. Higher energy, higher carbs, so probably a more active day, whereas these two are probably more for weight loss, GLP-1s, or if you're not as active, not expending as much energy.
Average person, should they be really trying to track macros? What's like a need to know versus when you see a dietitian?
I think if you're very data driven, which some people are, then tracking your macros can be very helpful data. But I think for the general public, I mean, I consider myself a millennial. Many of us grew up with, the very, very thin models, toxic diet culture, even disordered eating. And so for most people, I don't recommend tracking macros. I think that's not great for the mental health. And so I think even just being aware of portion sizes and having a visual like this can be really helpful. I think that's the extent as to which maybe most people should be thinking about their meals. And then if you want to go even further detail, if you have a specific condition, that's where you would work with a dietitian to get your custom portions. But for the general public, 30 grams of protein, that's around 4 golf balls, 4 ounces. When it comes to carbs, probably around a cup. And then fill the rest of your plate with vegetables. You're probably going to get that balanced plate just by you doing those portions.
Wait, let me ask you this. When you're focusing on a general nutrition spectrum, like when you start to eat healthier and feeling better, like why is that important? Why do you think most average people should care about what's going in their body?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite well known that maybe we should be caring about our health, but I think in general, when you make one decision that benefits your health, it tends to snowball. I think it's all about momentum. It's about slowly building habits rather than going all in and then going all out. So I think if you just make one balanced decision to maybe make sure that there is a protein, a carb, a fat in your meal, you're going to feel good about that decision, and it's probably going to snowball into other positive decisions. Maybe you decide to finally go work out. Maybe you decide to cook something at home, and it's a momentum game. That's how we actually, I guess, build healthy habits for the long term.
Eating better means feeling better, more energy to live your life.